right, hello everybody. Welcome to eComEngine's webinar that we are hosting today with an awesome team of industry experts. The title of the webinar is Going Global, and our industry experts will share their advice on expanding to Amazon Europe. So before we jump into the discussion, I want to introduce our panelists to each of you. So starting here on the left is myself, Colleen Quattlebaum. I am the marketing manager at eComEngine. So I've been here for over 5 years, and we're just very passionate about helping Amazon sellers succeed. And I know we have a lot of our customers on the call today that use our tools, but we're looking forward to sharing our knowledge and introducing all of these awesome experts to all of you on the call today. So joining us, we have TJ Hyland. He is the head of partnerships at Payoneer, and he's been in e-commerce in the e-commerce space for many years as well. I think he and I met about 5 years ago at the Prosper Show. And he's an e-commerce specialist, foreign exchange consultant, and he's going to share some tips that will make global e-commerce as simple as possible and help you get the most bang for your buck. And Andy Hooper is joining us from holiday, and he's off in his car right now. Tried to find the best connection he could because he's on vacation. So we appreciate him taking the time out today to join us. He is the CEO of Global E-commerce Experts, and he's been in e-commerce for over a decade. First as a seller himself, and now he's helping sellers to expand into the EU. And he has extensive knowledge, everything from VAT and compliance, warehousing, third-party logistics, account management. So we're excited to have him here today. We also have Jana, who's joining us from YLT Translations. She is the founder of YLT, and she has a team of over 40 people. She's worked with 6 to 8 figure Amazon sellers for many years, and she knows the e-commerce and Amazon space very well. And then we have 2 guests joining us from AVASK. Tom is the business development manager at AVASK, accounting and business consultants. And he really focuses on corporate and private entrepreneurs accounts selling on global e-commerce platforms. And Melanie is our tax guru. So she is a highly qualified accounting expert, and she's helped thousands of e-commerce sellers with her expert advice and professional solutions for over 20 years. So we're excited to have this awesome team of experts with us today. We have a lot of great things that we're going to discuss, and while we're waiting for just a few more people to join us today, I see a few more attendees still rolling in. We are going to, I'll just give you a brief overview about eComEngine. So we've been around for over a decade, and we have a full suite of tools for Amazon merchants. Feedback 5 is our feedback and review management tool. And this tool is available in 15 Amazon marketplaces. We recently launched in Netherlands, Turkey, Singapore, Brazil, and United Arab Emirates. And then we have 3 other tools in our suite. Market Scout is an FBA product research tool. Restock Pro is an inventory management tool for FBA sellers, and it is available in US, UK, and Canada. And Smart Price as a repricer for Amazon sellers. So if you have any interest or want to talk about any of those tools or have any questions, let us know. And then as far as our experts and what we plan to cover today, our agenda includes discussing the opportunity of expanding into Europe, the impact of Brexit. We know that's been a big topic in the news a lot lately, a few months away from that. Tax obligations. Melanie, again, she's a guru on tax, so she'll help share her expertise there. Andy will talk a lot about product compliance in the EU, the different fulfillment options we will be sure to cover. And Jana is going to talk about the importance of localization and when you need to consider that. And TJ will talk about converting currency when you're selling internationally. So without further ado, we will go ahead and get started. I'm going to stop sharing my slides so that you can see all the beautiful faces of everybody here on the call today. So let's start with Tom. Maybe you can help us out with just the general topic of, what should sellers think about, or how should they view the opportunity of expanding into Europe?
Yeah, of course. Hello, everyone. As I said, my name's Tom. Great question to open up with today's panel. Obviously, it's great to be with everyone again. I know we've done a few panels with this team before, and always great content that comes out. So great to see so many people joining us. So yeah, in terms of viewing the opportunity of actually expanding to Europe, there's a load of reasons why any seller should obviously look at expanding. But I think the 3 main aspects that I tend to discuss with sellers is looking at the market opportunities, so the market size and stats, the population and so on, which I'll come on to in just a second. Looking at sort of diversifying your income streams through the various marketplaces. And I would also say looking at Amazon, it's always a very good place to start, and looking at the different FBA solutions that make it so easy to actually expand. So in terms of, to kick off on the market size, I think I often compare Europe to the US because they tend to be sort of the more popular markets, the US obviously being the largest. So if you compare Europe and the US, for example, from a population point of view, and you group all of those countries within Europe, you're looking at 750 million people compared to the US at 330 million. Okay, so the opportunity is absolutely massive in Europe as a whole, as a territory, in comparison to the US. Again, comparing sort of the market penetration side, Europe up at 84%, and the US slightly higher at 89%, so very, very close in terms of the market penetration. And I think a really interesting statistic, in comparison from 2019 turnover for Europe is at 620 billion in Europe, as opposed to 570 billion in the US. Okay, so when you look at the size and the opportunity, not just as one market as UK, Germany, France as single markets, but as a group, as Europe, with the UK involved in that for now also, the opportunity is massive, and it's definitely worth getting into. In terms of sort of diversifying, if you like, your income streams, as I was saying, there's so many different markets within Europe. You've got, as I said, the UK, Germany, France, Italy, Spain. You've obviously got the Netherlands, which is a newer marketplace, as well as Sweden. And I think that's just going to be increasing and increasing as time goes on, from what we hear, from word of mouth at the moment. So I think in terms of the actual opportunity, there are so many different markets to sell on. You could dive into each market and look at sort of even the holiday periods, for example. You've got to make the most of the hot, the different weather. You've got to make the difference of the different holiday periods that come up, the bank holidays and so on. So open yourselves up to those larger sales periods where you could drive more sales because of that. So that's one aspect as well. I think, and over to Amazon's point of view, so sort of on to the last point of, how it's never been easier to actually expand to new markets. I would say that Amazon, as well as other marketplaces, have made it incredibly easy through their different FBA solutions to be able to really control where you're triggering your tax liabilities and where your inventory is held, which makes it much easier from a logistical point of view. So I think to understand the different FBA solutions, even just across sort of the core marketplaces in Europe, is absolutely essential. And just to run through them very, very quickly, you've got EFN, MCI, and Pan-EU. Okay, they're the three different FBA programs that are available. Now, EFN is typically where a seller may start, and more typically with Brexit, which I know, Melanie, you're going to discuss in a minute, but it is going to be something that's probably more relevant for, for the time being moving forward, especially into next year. But EFN will ultimately mean that your products are stored just in the one country. And as we all know, VAT is chargeable to the country of departure in our case. So in terms of where you're fulfilling, that's where you need to be VAT registered. Okay, so it's really important that wherever your inventory is held, whether it's under EFN, under one country, or on MCI, which is between 2 and 5 countries, or the full Pan-EU program where your inventory is circulating across all 7 countries, that's obviously going to make a big difference to where you're liable for VAT, which is obviously where we come in. But there's a huge number of advantages, I think, as you go through the program, starting with EFN and then working your way up to Pan-EU. It ultimately gives you much, much more visibility when you're on the Pan-European program. You send your inventory just to the one country. Amazon then redistribute your products according to the customer demand, and then you benefit from the quicker shipping, so Prime eligibility, Prime badge. Obviously, you've got the FBA listing on there as well, and you don't get stung with things like the cross-border transaction fees as much because your products are already closer to your buyers. And I think typically from my side, a lot of people say, oh, I don't sell as well in this market, or, you know, it's a bit slower in this marketplace, and their products aren't close enough to their buyers. They're not getting the prime promise, the prime delivery. And I think that's, you know, it's proven that that makes a massive difference in terms of how you expand and how you gain the most visibility.
Okay, great. All awesome information. Yeah, so it's obviously, it's a huge opportunity. There's a lot of differences in Europe compared to other marketplaces, but you mentioned Brexit. So Melanie, with Brexit looming, is it even worth considering expanding to the UK right now?
I would say definitely. The UK has always been seen as the gateway to the European marketplace. And I would say for anybody that is looking to start selling, chances are the UK is going to be the better option from a language point of view. And then them just sort of like, you know, putting their feet in the water to see if their product is going to get traction. But with Brexit looming, we are, of course, in the transition period at the moment, whereby come 1st of January 2021, we will be completely out. So I would say it is an opportunity to launch now. It is also an opportunity to still launch in 2021. I don't want to say there is a cutoff date to this, because there isn't a cutoff date. UK is a big marketplace from being very, very buoyant. We know that the growth or the market penetration is over 90%. And just because the UK people spend is about $2,500 per year, as opposed to the other countries in Europe whereby it's $1,600. Even though it's still attractive, I'll say that Brexit is not gonna, it shouldn't dampen people's spirits as far as like if they shouldn't look at expanding into Europe. Now, because we are, of course, under the transition period, other programs will be affected. The likes of EFN Network, just because Amazon is not going to be transmitting any inventory to other countries in Europe. So what may happen, you may find yourself that you have two shipments that are going on. You've got one that is coming into the UK, where you've got another shipment that is going into Europe. So I would say, depending whether you've started selling or not, if I was going to be starting to sell from scratch, I would look at getting 2 VAT numbers from the initial outset, one for the UK and another one for a European country. So that may be Germany or France or Italy, whichever one that's going to come out faster. But I would say the timing is also is very, very important for anybody that is looking to launch. Like Tom saying, that the opportunities out there, the turnover that we are seeing on the growth side of Europe, Brexit should not be an issue at all. Pan-EU program, of course, we're seeing a lot of change on that, you know, the UK is going to be considered, it's going to be more like a 4+1. So, which means that the 5 countries were part of the Pan-EU. There was Germany, Poland, and also Czech Republic, which are storage facilities for Amazon, but there isn't any platform there. Now, with UK coming out, it's no longer going to be, I'm sure they're going to come up with a name, to be honest, for it, which is no longer going to be the Pan-EU, but it means that if you've got your inventory in Europe, it will still be utilizing all the benefits that are available for the Pan-EU.
Okay. And so as our tax expert, so you mentioned getting a couple different VAT numbers is helpful, but what other tax obligations or things from a tax point of view should sellers consider when they're looking to expand to Europe?
I would say definitely there will no longer be distance selling thresholds after the 31st of December 2020. So which means if you're storing inventory here in the UK, it's going to be taxable only in the UK. We're going to be deemed as a third country. So ensure that you've got a VAT number in the country where you're going to be storing your product in Europe, because that will be triggering the VAT element. There will also be distance selling thresholds if you've got inventory in the countries like Germany or France and you're selling in between European countries. So those distance selling thresholds, they will still be available.
Okay. Thank you for that perspective regarding taxes and everybody's favorite piece. But in regards to compliance, Andy, can you speak a little bit about product compliance and what tips do you have for sellers to ensure that their products and processes are compliant with Amazon and local rules and regulations? Oh, I think you're on mute still, Andy.
I'm muted. There we go. So thank you very much for having us, Colleen. Thank you very much for organising it. So for those wondering why I'm in a strange car, I am on vacation. But when I heard the guys were putting this together and the panelists were just world-leading speakers, I just thought we had to be a part of it. So thank you very much for putting it together. So for the compliance side, what we're really talking about now is we're not now talking about your VAT. We're really trying to focus specifically on the compliance of your product. And product compliance is one of the things that a lot of people get suspended for, or they get removable, unfillable inventory when they've got or start selling. And Amazon specifically has got a lot hotter on this in recent months, where actually you've now got to upload your labels to the product before you start expanding. And obviously in the car, I'm then looking around thinking, what do people mean? I'm not talking about the label for the SKU of the product. I'm talking about the product label. So I don't know how well that's going to come out, but you see where I'm going. It's the label that's on the actual product, not the SKU of the product, all right? And we need to make sure that that is compliant. And there are three types of things you need to consider. You need to consider what regulations the product falls under. You need to consider the ingredients or the product itself, if it's actually compliant with the EU regulations, not just send your US product and hope for the best, okay? Because the regulations are different. And then the third part of that is making sure that your label is compliant. So the different areas that you might need to think about are electronic products, and I'm going to come on more onto that in a moment, toys, cosmetics, medicinal products, footwear and textiles specifically, medical devices, food, supplements, and there's a whole load of others that we can't go into. But really, you need to think about, you need to check the compliance. And just because somebody else is selling the exact same product on Amazon today, that doesn't mean it's compliant. I want to make sure we're really clear on that, because the biggest thing we get is, yeah, but someone else is selling so and it's there. And we're like, no, just because someone else is doing it, it doesn't make it right, okay? So getting the compliance of your product is absolutely crucial. And I think that what we've seen over the last 2 to 3 years is that Amazon specifically is getting hotter on that. The governments in each of the European countries are getting hotter on that. And I'm going to say Europe and include the UK in that at the moment, because we're still part of the EU. I know Melanie's just talked about Brexit, so I'm not going to go into that, but we need to consider it. The EU are the EU regulations, all right? Now, there are some anomalies per country that you do need to be aware of, but really the first thing is to think about when you're bringing your product over is, what regulations does my product fit under, and what do I need to do to make it compliant? And, just sending your product with a US label on it, with the US regulations, is not compliant. So make sure we're all clear on that. So there are lots of different areas, and we could speak for hours and hours just on the compliance of the products. But if you sell anything that could harm someone, all right, and that could be putting a glove on, plaster, an eye patch, to consuming health supplements and everything else in between, all right, then you really need to make sure that product is compliant before you ship it. Because what will happen is that if they get to the border and customs open it, you'll just get held behind. And we had I'm going to give one quick example here. We had someone that has beach carts. So it's a cart that goes along the beach, 4 wheels, little frame on it with a bit of canvas, and they just put it along the beach, right? And, that got held up in customs because the packaging had a seat belt on it. And because they had a seat belt on it, it was deemed that it might be for use of a child. Therefore, customs wouldn't let it into the country. And they've had to spend £5,000 putting through testing before they could even release it to Amazon. So, we've talked about supplements or electrical goods. This is just something that's a beach cart. But because you've got a strap in it and a child could be strapped in it, it has to reach British Standard EN 1888, all right? So that's just one quick example. Now, what I want to touch on before we move on from there, because I know I'm going pretty quick to get a lot of this in, is the responsible person. So basically, in the 16th of July next year, there's something coming in called the Market Surveillance Regulations. What that means is that anyone who has a CE marked product, And a CE marking is basically a stamp of approval here in the UK for lots of electrical products, toys, and product safety. And if you have a CE mark product and you or the product is made or outside the EU, then you must have a responsible person for the product in the EU, and secondly, an address where someone is responsible for that product. So for example, if you are selling this iPod or electrical earpod devices, then what you'll need is someone who is responsible for that product in the EU and their address on your product, so that if someone, let's say Trading Standards here in the UK, it's the government agency that is in charge of making sure everything is safe. They can knock on the door and say, hey, Mr. AirPod owner, you're the responsible person. Please, can I see the information on this file? And then we want to see a product information file, safety data sheets, the brand owner, and a sample of the product. All right. So they're two very different things that you need to consider when you're expanding. You've got the compliance of your product, make sure it's compliant. Secondly, come the 16th of July next year, you need to make sure that you have a responsible person for your product if you have a CE mark product. And of the thousands of sellers that we work with, I would say probably 60 to 70% of sellers all have CE mark products. So this is absolutely crucial. Amazon, for example, has already put on their website a response on back end of Seller Central, somewhere where you can add the responsible person information. But I want to stress, someone has to be responsible for those products at that address. You can't just get an address off the internet and just say, yeah, that's where the responsible person is. It won't wash. That was a very quick fire. I hope that was going some, right?
A lot of great information, and I love your energy. So that was really, really important. We've talked about Brexit. We actually have a lot of great resources that we'll be sure to share with everybody after in an email following this webinar. And then one of my peers, Becky, if you want to put any links in the chat, that's helpful too. But AVASK has an awesome ebook all about Brexit. So you're welcome to download that. And then Andy's team at Global E-commerce Experts, they have a great PDF that talks about the responsible person. So we'll be sure to include that as well as a guide to the 6 steps, for instance, for selling in Amazon Europe. So we have some other resources we'll be sharing with you throughout the call, but if Becky gets a chance, she'll pop 1 or 2 of those links in there. So Melanie, Andy, is there anything else that sellers need to consider when expanding to the EU? I mean, we're in the middle of a pandemic, Q4 is upon us. You know, anything you want to touch on regarding the timing right now? Oh, Melanie, I think you're on mute.
Yes. We're both going. Go on, Melanie.
I would say from my side, with the timing, you need to decide to expand into the EU only when you are ready to do so. I know we can sit here and push people to expand into Europe. You will know your business. I've been asked these questions many times, that at what stage should my business expand into Europe? Now, as well as being into tax, I'm also an accountant. So if my client was going to be asking me as to when you think I should be expanding maybe to the US, I would look at the experience now, because they're asking me for a guide. Do you have solid experience? Do you understand the marketplace that you're currently trading in, which is the US side, say for instance, or the UK side? If you have that solid experience, great. Turnover-wise, what do I normally see people expanding into Europe? And I'm not gonna say anything bad about somebody who is looking to expand today, because you could just decide that I will start trading in the UK straight up, and that's going to be my first market. But what you don't want to do is to be launching out in the US, and then all of a sudden, here's Europe, I heard about Europe, and you're going to Europe straight away. You want to gain that experience. Now, from my point of view, I would say the moment at least you are on a really humble turnover of maybe $500,000, that's the point that I will be looking at launching my products into new countries, because I would expect that And depending, because sometimes when do you reach 500,000? Do you reach 500,000 in 6 months? Do you reach 500,000 in a year? You know, I've seen some people that are on 500,000 in the US and they've decided to launch straight away. I would say with those people, just ensure that you've got sufficient funds to find your inventory, because you need to make sure that you can fit the beast. Europe, it's got its own population. I think it's talking about 747 million on population wise. US about 330, something like that. So it's almost double or over double the amount of the US. So you need to ensure that you can you've got the sufficient funds for you to expand into Europe. Now, if you look at the impact of COVID, I've had my clients that left the European market back in 2018, and I don't know what's happened, especially the month of August, whereby everybody has come back. I don't know how many emails I've received, people saying, Melanie, I've started selling again. It's like, oh my God, you've taken me back to 2018, you're back again. So yeah, I'm back with a new product. I hear that Europe has gone absolutely crazy. Of course, you know, the e-commerce growth is expected to grow by 12.7%. Now, the growth for Poland alone per year has always been estimated on around 12 to 15% per year on growth. And also, the e-commerce sales, they're expected to hit at least 844 billion. Now, that is huge. As you guys, you know that, you know, I know we're not talking a lot about COVID, but we're still in COVID. You know, we're still working from home, some of us, except for Tom, of course, but we're still working from home and we're still shopping online. I don't know how much I've spent on Amazon ever since we went on lockdown. And honestly, I was actually saying to my husband the other day, I wish I had links for all my clients' products, because I'll be buying from them only, just because of the amount of money we've spent online. And now, we've seen that the digital behavior has actually changed. And I'm not just going to be saying from the likes of 18 to 45 years, like we've always said, everybody is shopping online. So it's seriously, it's not rocket science for you to expand into new markets, especially during this place. In Germany alone, there is at least 25.8 million people who are expected to be Prime members by the end of 2020. Now, Prime members, not just e-commerce shoppers, Amazon Prime members. Now, that is huge in terms of like numbers. Moreover, we've seen a new platform being launched about a week ago, Sweden. Now, who would have thought? I would have thought that maybe Poland and Austria was going to be launching first, because, you know, my clients, they pass the distance selling thresholds more or faster in Austria than in Sweden. So I was actually shocked, and I wouldn't seriously be surprised to see Amazon launching more platforms in the near future, or before even end of the year. I'm sure there will be those that are going to be coming through. There is Netherlands as well, which has been recently launched. Again, that is another nice platform. In Netherlands, it's a small population, but I can tell you now, online penetration again in Netherlands, it is absolutely high. So I would say COVID, of course, you know, it's not a good word, and I don't like saying it, but, you know, it has its own benefits that we've seen. I've got some of my clients, you know, they never thought they'll have 2 million cash in the bank account during this time. We're looking at investment opportunities all of a sudden, even down to knitting products. You know, knitting products. Who would have thought that somebody would have 500,000 cash in the bank account who sells knitting products? Because, you know, it was just a business that was just plodding on. But, you know, the whole e-commerce is absolutely changing. Sorry, Andy, to eat your time. I'll leave you to continue on that.
No, that was great, Melanie. No, I love it. So I think that's great. I mean, I just want to really piggyback off the back of that. I think there's a couple of things to say. You know, when launching into the EU, I think one of the key things to say is, when you want to launch, you know when's right to launch, exactly as Melanie said. But also think about, because of COVID, we're in growth market. Everything is growing. So you want to launch in that growth period. And I think that actually what you're going to see is actually between now and Christmas is we're going to see massive, massive growth, strides and strides. And now is the time to get involved in that if you're ready to do it. But if you're not ready, don't rush it, because quite often we'll see people that rush it end up making it being a little bit crazy and it never quite works. And I think the other thing to say is that what you really need to think about is, what does that process look like? When you're looking to expand, you want a step-by-step guide that's going to do that. So I think that Colleen mentioned it earlier, we've got a 6-step guide that talks people about what are those steps you need to take in order to make that expansion a success. Because the expansion, making a successful expansion isn't just alone about shipping products. There's a lot more to expanding to Europe than just shipping your products to Amazon and just hoping for the best. All right. So I'm not going to go on and on and on about it, but if you need a guide and you need a process, just take that and use that and just follow the process and you will be successful. All right. So I think that wraps that off. So I think we dovetailed that well, Melanie. Thank you.
Thank you. Great conversation. I appreciate it. And so we've talked about, all the different countries and, there's different shopping behaviors in every single country. So from a listing optimization and localization standpoint, Jana, can you help us understand the importance of localization and when you should be translating your product listings and just more information regarding translations there in Europe?
Yeah, definitely. So when it comes to Europe, we're talking mostly about Germany as the biggest marketplace in Europe. And apart from the UK, of course, because a lot of US sellers, they just want to go to UK because of the language barrier, what Melanie has previously mentioned. But a lot of they want to sell in Germany as well. So people do speak English in Europe, but it is more efficient to have your listings translated before you start selling on international marketplaces, because the keywords and everything, they're gonna get like very highly, they're gonna be highly search volume, like when it's done in the native language. Then when you use English words, a lot of languages have the mixture of like both English and the target language, the keywords, but in a lot of cases you would put them in backend. You would not put them in your front end listing, because like a mix of like French language and English does not sound right. And of course you also have to make sure that if you still want to use the English keywords in your front end listing, sometimes the English word means something completely different in the target marketplace, and it can mean a lot of crazy stuff. Like we had like one example of the listing, which is like a chewing toy for dogs, and the seller left the word pet like in the title, and it says like pet and then chewing toy, and then in French it would read it would read pet as fart, so it would be like fart chewing toy for dogs. So you really have to pay attention, like don't mix the languages before checking what they actually mean. So I would definitely, number one, suggest that everybody translate those listings to the target language marketplaces. Definitely. Then you should definitely use, translators who know what they're doing. A lot of, sellers, they just go to Fiverr.com. There are a lot of great translators out there, but you really have to know that, that they really know Amazon, they know what they're doing. Otherwise, like, everybody can translate like how to, clean your vacuum cleaner, but like how would they incorporate like a good sales copy in for a marketplace? Like, do they know the length of the title? Like, what's their keyword strategy? Do they know how to do keywords in any of the tools, or what is their like hidden sales strategy? Because the whole point is to make a good sales copy, and not to just kind of have like word by word translation. And without using any keywords, your product is not going to pop up. Like, so it doesn't really matter how good that translation actually is. With no keywords, you're not going to be relevant for any of the keywords. And this is also what brings us to the topic of the localization. And there's actually, even if you hire someone to translate your listing from the US to, let's say, German marketplace, you're not going to have the same style of the marketplace. Like US style is very salesy, has a sales pitch. Like people are kind of forced into buying products, like buy it now, like, what's there to wait, like buy our product. And Germans don't like that. They're kind of really like straightforward, like straight to the facts, like give me the benefits of the product, how they're gonna solve my problem, and not like to kind of persuade me into buying your amazing product. And I always take an example of this glass espresso cup, where like one bullet in the US like listing says cool, cooler, coolest, and the Germans say thermal isolated glass. So it's like, like show me the benefits. You're not gonna burn your fingers. I don't care about getting like all emotional, like metaphorical stuff, there in my listing. And it's also very interesting to know that for instance, German marketplace, German Amazon, is the marketplace from all the other worldwide marketplaces that gives out the most refunds. So you really want to like do things properly, and you don't want people to think that your product is something else, and then you're just gonna, you know, refund and they'll send it back. So you really have to understand what the marketplace is about, who are you selling to, and you just really want to convey your message the right way to other foreign marketplaces. Otherwise, if you're doing it by word, you're definitely going to fail. Also, another thing is that a lot of sellers, they translate keywords just as they are. We've seen this mistake like repeat to like a lot of different sellers, 8-figure, 6-figure, doesn't really matter. Like first product sellers, they also like a lot of them make a mistake by just giving a list of keywords to your translator and just do it. And it's really important to understand like that not every language has the same structure. Like for instance, like German language has a lot of big compound words, and if you give like an English keyword list to your translator, he might not be using this compound word which you want to be ranked for the German marketplace. So never do that. Never use Google Translate. Google Translate doesn't know anything about, you know, context and like conveying this message I'm talking about. So basically make sure to use people who know what they're doing. And it's not only Amazon sellers that have problem with that. Like huge companies have failed miserably on foreign marketplaces just because they failed to identify their target audience. They failed to localize. I mean, just look at Starbucks in Australia. They completely failed to, you know, adjust to the coffee culture out there in Australia. They just kind of, you know, pursued with their own products, and they had to, at the end of, you know, the year, they just had to close every single coffee shop over there. Or for instance, Kim Kardashian, like she just decided to launch her shapewear, firstly called Kimono, and then the Japanese government, they were in such a shock, and the Tokyo mayor, they called her and they told like, look, you really have to change the name, otherwise you're not going to be launching this at all. And they did that like literally in the nick of time before she was to launch her shapewear collection now called Skims. So, you know, like these are some really, really big names in the industry, and you would thought like, you know, they would definitely do their homework. And this is something that a lot of people don't actually think about. But I think this is very, very important. And I would say the localization is maybe even more important than, you know, the translations. Like you have to grasp like the audience, the target audience who you're selling to, and you really have to adjust your way of addressing these people, the style, you know, the choice of words, word order, and stuff like that. It's very, very important to do that. And especially this also applies to, you know, like all the new marketplaces, as we, you know, mentioned Sweden. But like for Sweden, like for instance, a lot of people speak English over there as their basically native language. And it's amazing with Sweden, and expect really a lot from Swedish marketplace, because they have like 90% of internet sales, and online sales in 2019 were 8.24 billion. And I think that's absolutely, you know, outstanding. And, you know, having IKEA, H&M, and Nelly, for instance, at their marketplaces, I think home furniture is very popular just because of, you know, like the IKEA with like a worldwide brand, and clothing, footwear, beauty, and healthcare products. I think they're very important for overall all the new marketplaces as well, because I think the health and beauty care products rank well wherever you sell them. But just make sure to check the categories which are available on these new marketplaces, because you don't want to, you know, like you're selling I don't know, like cell phone equipment that has not been rolled out as a category on various marketplaces. So whatever you do, you really have to do the market research and the keyword research for each marketplace separately. That's absolutely crucial for all new sellers on all international marketplaces.
Good advice. Yeah, definitely. Those are all really good examples. I love hearing the real life examples, and it's worth that extra time to invest in your products to launch it the right way. And YLT actually has a great checklist for sellers launching products into a new marketplace. So Becky just shared that in the chat. So definitely take a look at that link when you get a chance. And so, you know, we're launching products, we're talking about sending products overseas. Andy, should sellers consider a third-party warehouse? And if so, which countries allow this, or where can they do this?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. It's one of the questions we get asked quite a lot. And I think the first thing to say is that when you're initially looking to expand, you know, you should use FBA. FBA is an amazing tool. You know, whether you're on Pan-EU or you're using the European Fulfillment Network, that doesn't matter. I think the key thing is that you use FBA to start off with, because, you know, unless you can't use FBA and you've got an oversized product, or you've got products that are, you know, classed dangerous, and Amazon hasn't got any room in their dangerous goods warehouses, you know, outside of that, you should use FBA to start off with. Now, Amazon have never come out and said the algorithm says, you know, this, and this, really. But what we do know is those that use FBA to start off with do have a slight acceleration. Now, we've got a warehouse. I'd love you all to use my warehouse, but I'm being totally upfront that really you need to, if you pay attention, right? So use FBA to start with. Now, there is times where you don't want to use FBA, you can't use FBA, or you've outgrown that way of doing that. And I think there's a couple of different things to say is that you can use warehouses across Europe. You know, we've got one in the UK, Germany, and the Netherlands. It works really, really well for different sellers based on different formats. But try and use just one to start off with, because it just makes your life a lot easier. And when you're looking to expand and you're in a completely foreign market for most of our sellers, then actually making it easy is the best thing that you can do. Having one point of contact, or if you've got loads of warehouses and loads of agencies you're working with, that really makes it really, really difficult. Try and hone in and work with just a couple. Don't make it too difficult for yourselves, because you want to make it as easy, and warehousing is exactly the same. So with Europe, look at where your goods are going to be easiest to get in. And really, Germany at the moment is really difficult to get products into Germany. So we would suggest the UK or the Netherlands, whatever works best for you, and we can have that conversation with sellers about that. But bring the goods into, or if you're bringing containers in, then bring a container in. What a lot of our sellers they do is they bring that in, we unload that, we ship half to Amazon, and we keep the other half in the warehouse and fulfill to the rest of Europe from our facility. Because they might be working on Amazon, but they might also be selling on their website, eBay, and a whole load of other platforms, because there's many of them. So having the ability to be able to scale means not only have you got products in Amazon, but you've probably got them in a third party. You can get them QC checks. All those sort of things are really, really critical to making sure that you're moving your products forward. And I think the other thing is that we've got the digital sales tax that has just come in Amazon, which is seeing a 2% increase on fees. Now, that's not 15 to 17%, for example. That's 2% on the 15%. All right. So don't think my costs have now gone up 2%. It's not quite a true reflection on cost, but it has gone up. And what we know is that Amazon will be putting more costs in come to Q3, come Q4. Those costs only ramp up. The more storage space they've got, the less storage space they've got, the higher the fees. It's a based on demand thing. So you need to consider where your products are going to be best. Working with a third party that can do seller fulfilled prime is what you want. I think Tom was talking right at the beginning, where we were talking about when people can get that product really quickly, we see the uplift. And I think that's really, really important to think about. And I'm just trying to think of those other questions. Yes, so digital sales tax, there's other options that you can use, but really you want to make sure. So that's where I was going. So COVID, Amazon shut its warehouses. If Amazon shuts its warehouse again, where are you going to send your product? So at the least, you need to make sure you've got the ability to turn on to a 3PL straight away. Because if Europe has a second spike, we already know that Amazon will prioritize, those sort of products. So history tells us, and we all know that history repeats, is that if Amazon sees an uplift or an issue in certain countries, they're going to shut out FBA down. So you need to make sure, if you're already selling, that you've got a 3PL involved, because you might have a container on its way over, or you're less than container load. You might be sending 5 pallets over straight to FBA, and all of a sudden, you got nowhere to send them. And as soon as they're sat at the dock, a one pallet bay in our warehouse costs about 68 pence, right? In a customs warehouse, it's £160 a day, all right? So you don't want to have anything in customs any longer than you need them. So basically, when do you need a 3PL? We advise you probably sort one out as you're starting. You don't have to send anything there. You've got the flexibility. If you're bringing a container in, then you definitely need one. And if you want to fulfill from other platforms, you also definitely need one. And you can use UK, Germany, or Netherlands. We would suggest starting in the UK and then going and growing from there. So hopefully that answers that, Colleen.
Definitely. Yes. Thank you. And so there's a lot of costs involved, but there's also a lot of opportunity, as we've mentioned. There's a lot of opportunity to make good money and sell a lot overseas. But we want to make sure you're getting the most bang for your buck. So TJ, can you help us understand how sellers can ensure they're getting the most favorable exchange rate when they're doing business internationally?
Sure. So 45 minutes in, here I am. But yeah, happy to chat about this. So what's important to realize is that, you know, when you are selling on a marketplace internationally, you are going to get paid in whatever currency that is. So whether that's pounds, euros, Canadian dollars, Mexican pesos, whatever it may be. So, you know, one of the easy solutions to that is to have an alternative such as Payoneer to help bring your funds that you earn in foreign currency back to US dollars. You know, if you look at it, a lot of the marketplaces, Amazon included, will convert your pounds or euros back to dollars, but it doesn't give you much freedom or flexibility to do what you want with your funds. So one of the things we always talk about, and especially in conjunction with AVASK, is making sure you pay your VAT obligations. So where in the past it might have been a little wishy-washy to see if you needed to pay VAT, but probably in the last 2.5, 3 years, since VAT numbers and EORI numbers are absolutely mandatory, and now the governments of the various countries have cracked down on Amazon, you know, you have to pay your VAT obligations. So what we do is what we help businesses is to make those VAT payments. So when you hold your funds that you receive from your sales on the UK or sales or anywhere in the EU, what you can then do is make a payment to HMRC or any of the other VAT authorities throughout Europe completely for free. And why that works is, you know, if you were to just take your pounds that you made from your sales in the UK and had them automatically converted back to US dollars and sent to your bank account, that's good. And you're going to get your funds back probably a little bit faster. But what it doesn't do is doesn't give you much freedom and flexibility to use your funds as you want it. And now if you have to go then make a VAT payment or supplier payment or a payment to a vendor, you're going to have to use either your bank or an alternative FX company or something else where the fees are going to be pretty high in terms of a flat fee. Sending an international bank wire is, you know, anywhere from, you know, 40 to 50 US dollars. And then the exchange rate is going to be on top of that. And banks that have way more overhead typically charge, you know, 5 to 10% on the FX. So just to sort of recap that is, if you had an account like we offer at Payoneer where you can hold your sales that you make overseas and then give you the ability to make payments out of those accounts pretty easily. The other thing I wanted to talk about is in regards to capital. So we actually launched a working capital solution last year out of customer feedback, and you know, I think it's an incredibly relevant conversation for sellers of all levels, and especially if you're considering expanding internationally, because you should not disrupt your main market or your sort of well-oiled machine if that's your US business to expand internationally, even if it's just listing a couple products, you know. So when you are expanding internationally, there are a couple of things you have to consider in terms of costs. So setting up VAT or setting up some sort of logistic solutions, translations and optimizations of your listings and your site. So all of these things do have a cost. So if you don't have enough funds to sort of front that, you know, you might want to look into additional working capital solutions. So, you know, it's something that we offer for sellers. You know, it's designed specifically for Amazon and Walmart sellers. So it's a pretty optimal product, and happy to chat with anyone about that. And I think we're actually gonna
We'll go ahead and, yeah, Becky will actually share the landing
share the
page
link.
to the Instant Capital Advance there for anybody who wants more information. So thank you, TJ.
No
And
problem.
yeah, so this is a lot of great information. I do see some questions in the chat, so I'd like to take a few minutes to tackle some of those. And then we can, you know, add any other last minute tips for expanding into Europe. So we have one from someone, this is geared towards Jana. It says, our product is already listed and translated on Amazon in Germany. It's sold by Global Store US, an Amazon Global Store. These ship from US Amazon warehouses. And for us to sell Prime FBA, should we create a brand new listing or become a new seller on this listing and send inventory to FBA Germany?
Well, I cannot answer that. We don't do the inventory or the manager. Maybe Andy can help with this.
Okay, sorry, I actually had read the first part that mentioned the translation. Yeah. So before I read the whole thing, I geared it towards you and then I finished reading. So yeah, it's more inventory related.
Yeah. I think what they're trying to say there is that, you know, their products listed on .com and people are buying it. They can buy it in Germany and it just gets shipped over from there. What they're doing is they're paying huge amount of fees in doing that in order for that to work. So what we would recommend, I think the answer is, if you're seeing sales like that, I mean, one, you're already selling products. You've already proven that the model, there's a demand for your product. So I would say, yes, you should expand. You will need to open up an additional seller account in Amazon.de, but that'll do the whole of Europe all in one. So you open up a European account. If you go into Seller Central and go to inventory, sell globally, you can do that literally the press of a button. Now, what you will need to do is you'll have to go through the whole setting up an account, and Amazon calls this knowing your customer. So you go through this whole KYC process to make sure that you are the right person, you're compliant, you know, the business person, the address, and all those different things that go with that. So you will have to go through that process to set up, and you will have to register for VAT, and you will have to make sure your products are compliant. But you've already proven that that works. So I would say, yes, you do need to set up a additional Seller Central, but just go to inventory tab, sell globally, really easy. You need to think whether that's right for your business or not, because you will be triggering additional costs, VAT, for example, you know, in order to make that happen. All right. But, you know, you've already proven that people want to buy your product.
Okay, thank you. And Nikki, the one who submitted that question, hopefully we answered your question. Thank you, Andy. We definitely have another one here, and this one is for you, Jana. And it's the seller asked, what if I already launched into a new marketplace and I used Google Translate? Uh-oh.
I mean, a lot of people do that. And I mean, you're probably not gonna get, I mean, look, if you have a good product, you have like good pictures, like good A+ content and stuff like that, your product can sell well, right? Even if you have like a poorly written listing. But just imagine, what if you have an optimized listing with keywords and everything done right, how much more you could increase your sales. So what I would suggest is, like, you know, like seeing where your product is right now, maybe by some wonder Google Translate got some keyword in the titles, or maybe ranking for something. And then I would always ask for like an opinion about like getting like a feedback, you know, about your listing, or giving it to someone like to tell you like what are the low-hanging fruits of the listing, for instance, and then like giving a solution for optimization. I'm absolutely sure that you, apart from maybe one accidental keyword, don't have any other keywords in your Google Translate. And I would just completely like probably, I mean, I don't know your listing, but I will probably redo the whole listing, probably get the better structure, you know, like basically just as I said, like convey the message you have in your home marketplace to a foreign marketplace. But I mean, this is not a disaster. I mean, it is a disaster in one hand, because a lot of people do the Google Translate and then they go with this and just ruin their, you know, honeymoon period. And you could have done so much better. And at this moment, you spend a lot of time, a lot of money. And what is really good is like when you optimize your keywords in your upfront listing, you can use these keywords, which are probably good, in your PPC campaigns. So you can basically, you know, just, do a lot of things at once, and just, you know, and save a lot of time when you kind of plan ahead. And this is this is just my advice. It's not the end of the world. It's going to take a little bit more effort to optimize to get you back probably to page 1 and to be indexed for the keywords you want to, but it's not the end of the world, definitely. So that's good news.
Thank you. We have a few more questions. I'm actually going to share my screen again because I do want to make sure that we just share a couple of the special offers that we have from everybody who was here on the call. So I'll let all of our attendees just take a look at those and read those special offers, and we'll also send them out in an email after this. We have the recording ready to go. But a couple other email questions. We have a question here for AVASK. What should I do before December 31st? Is there a way I can mitigate inventory issues that will arise because of Brexit?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, Melanie,
no, you go, Tom. You go.
Okay. Well, I'll start off. I'm sure you can add. So, I mean, this is a really, really good question, and one that's getting asked more and more at the moment as we obviously come closer and closer to the end of the year already, which is scary. Don't know where this year's even gone. But in terms of registration, I mean, ultimately it depends on your current situation. I would say that if you're selling from the UK and you're, again, under that European fulfillment network, then you somewhat got your eggs in one basket at the moment. So I think to avoid any disruptions and, as you say, sort of problems with your inventory management and so on, as Melanie said earlier, you're going to want to register for VAT in another country, such as Germany, or most likely the next biggest marketplace for you, which for most sellers is of Germany or France. And I think what's really, really important is it's not an overnight registration. These things can take 2-3 months from the point that you submit the application, if not sometimes even longer, for the likes of Germany. So bearing in mind that time frame and getting prepared for that, and making sure that you've got that VAT number in place so that you can still keep that supply going into Europe and then circulating the other countries as well, and potentially even looking at the Pan-European program as an addition to that to make sure that you're maximizing your visibility.
Okay, thanks. And we have another question here about VAT, so I think maybe for Melanie. If marketplaces were to remit my VAT next year, what do I need a tax advisor for?
That is a good question. So what's happening is e-commerce marketplaces, they are going to be remitting sales or funds to the tax authorities because they believe that they don't get all the money that is due. Is about over 20 billion that is the tax authority have got a hold on, so they need to recover that. They basically, marketplaces are taking over your responsibility that you were doing previously of paying the tax authorities, because I wasn't paying before. I was preparing the reports and remitting them to the tax authority and showing them to you. So I'll continue doing that. So what they are doing is they're taking your responsibility because you are the ones that were transferring the funds into the tax authorities, not myself. So, which means it saves you now almost all of a sudden the hassle of you remitting funds into the tax authorities. So you don't have to do that, but we will have to file the reports, which is proving the fact that yes, whatever Amazon remitted or the marketplace remitted is correct, or it's not correct actually. You imported products into the country. You are supposed to be claiming import VAT. So instead of you paying a bill of 100,000, actually no, it's 50,000 that you're supposed to be paying. So for us, it's going to be correction reports because you would have money. It's more like you're paying in advance before the report is submitted, and all of a sudden you're going to be having a refund. And of course, that is still under discussion as to how it's going to go, because as you can understand, Europe is very, very complex, but at the same time, they need the money from the marketplaces. So let's see when they launch that, how they're going to be launching it. But yeah, we work very closely with Amazon. We will work very close with our clients as well. We're going to let you know as to how that is going to pan out. But they are taking your responsibility, not our responsibilities as tax advisors.
Okay, very good. I think we have time for one, maybe two more questions. TJ, we have one about using a currency company. This person's asking, when should I start using a currency company? Oh, I think you're on mute.
Sorry, I was trying to find the mute button. Yeah, so there's a couple of discussions about when you should start using it. My personal belief is, from the minute you start selling and you set up your Amazon account and you set up your disbursement methods, you should set it up with the idea of not changing it again. So when you start to expand to the EU or wherever, the UK, Payoneer or any other company will be able to give you a receiving account to put in those marketplaces, and then you can receive and transfer those funds back to your own account. Like I said, once the funds are there, it's not like there's a fee to hold the funds or anything like that. You're really just looking to get more control over your funds. So even if it's small amounts to start and you scale, and as everyone on this call hopes that businesses are scaling as they go overseas, there's the opportunity is there for you, and we can absolutely help with that.
Great. Well, thank you. Well, I know we are at time, so just want to thank everybody for joining us today. Hopefully you gained a lot of more information and tips and advice, and that you know a little bit more about what is required to make that leap into selling into Europe. And in order to do it successfully, take the time, do the research, work with some of these great companies to help make yourself successful. No time like the present. So thanks to Tom, Melanie, Andy, TJ, Jana, all of you for joining us today. This was a lot of very helpful information. And as I mentioned, we will send a recording of this webinar out to everybody over email, as well as all of the resources that we shared and the special offers. And if you need to get in touch with any of these companies, you can feel free to email me and I can help you get in touch with them if you want to talk to any of them directly. So hope everybody has a great day, and thanks again for joining.
Thanks, Colleen. Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much for organizing this. Take care, guys.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone. Have a great day. Cheers.
Thanks. Take care.
Thanks, Colleen. Bye.
Bye. Enjoy your vacation.
Thanks.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Bye,
Bye.
Colleen.